But journalist and best-selling author, that's Michael Lewis, says sports officials are not the only ones feeling the heat these days. In his new podcast, it's called Against the Rules. Lewis says the authority of other referees in American life, like financial regulators, judges, and public editors at newspapers, are under attack. He argues when you have a weak referee, you got a really big problem. Michael Lewis, good to see you. And let me just say bravo and congrats. This podcast was so good and so interesting and so well done. And I know this is only episode 1, so let's see how you do.
Well, you're always at the mercy of your material, right? And the material here is unbelievable.
But this is what I learned.
This human referee is on the run everywhere you see, unless he's bought by somebody, in which case the person who bought him keeps him in place.
Well, in the podcast, I learned that refereeing is 100% negative business. As you point out, they get a lot of ref you suck, so they have that barrage every day. And the reality is, though, that it's gotten better, yet the coaches and the fans think it's gotten worse, and the NBA is spending a lot of money to get this right.
You know, the basketball, professional basketball, is a nice little microcosm to start, because you can see in the last 5 years, the new commissioner, Adam Silver, has engaged in this pretty intense sort of effort to reform refereeing, to make it better. They built a $15 million center across the river here, the replay center.
With how many screens?
110 screens, and it's nothing but, all those screens are connected by direct fiber optic cable to the NBA arenas, to give them different angles on the court, and you see nothing but the angles on the court. The whole point is just to give the referees another tool to get it right.
Yeah, but people are still mad.
But the refs are trained in ways they weren't trained before. They have to study their mistakes as they've never had to study their mistakes before. They're made aware of the various biases that their minds are prone to. There's no question that they've got, and you can measure the accuracy of the calls have gotten better, and yet people are angrier and angrier and angrier.
Isn't that part of it? Fixing refereeing means making better refs, but don't we also have to be better and not assume that they're going to be right 100% of the time, every time, because nobody is?
That's the question. So you've got this conundrum. You've got referees getting better, at the same time everybody dislikes them more. What's going on? And I think they're operating. This is the problem. They're operating in a different environment. Every mistake is now scrutinized, and there's a mechanism for generating outrage about the mistakes. The social media.
So true.
That all the forces that are there to attack them are amplified, and the forces to defend themselves are not keeping up.
And that's kind of the larger story, right? What you say is what's happening to them tells us a lot about what's happening to us.
Yes. If you look,
the arbiters of a game, the arbiters of life, the judicial system, all of it.
If you look at what's happening in American life and with the American political life, the campaigns in the last presidential election, they gained traction. It surprised people, Bernie Sanders and Donald Trump. The source of their energy was anger about unfairness. Everything's rigged. And this is happening at the same time that you have the people whose job it is to ensure that things aren't rigged are under new kinds of attack. It's a very interesting situation. And the point of the podcast is sort of unspool it, is to sort of figure out what are these forces at work that are undermining the ref. And the basketball, you can see one of the forces, that when you have these refs become much more objective and more accurate, who gets angry? The stars get angry.
Yeah.
Because they're used to getting the calls.
Yeah.
So you're eliminating some privilege. So what refs, a genuinely neutral ref, is offensive to someone who's in a position of privilege.
You also saw racial bias in reffing that I thought was interesting too.
Well, there was this I mean, this is like an example of how scrutinized those referees are. So there's a professor named Justin Wolfers at the University of Michigan who did this paper.
Australian, yeah.
But he's showing that there was a racial bias in refereeing. They did this 7 or 8 years ago. And to me, the interesting thing about the paper was what happened after. That he went back and studied it after, and they eliminated it. I mean, there was a story about how they'd gotten better. And yet you never hear anybody praise the refs, right? All you hear, both sides thinks the refs screwed them. How could that be?
Yeah.
You would think for everybody who's angry, there'd be someone who's happy, but there's not. And these pressures on the people whose job it is to ensure fairness are an attack on fairness.
Oh, it's so fascinating.
It's very interesting. And there's an appearance by Walker Lewis, your teenage son, which was also
and others.
And others.
Thank you.
Trying to plug Walker.
All right, Against the Rules is available wherever you get your podcast. You are watching CBS This Morning. Guess what? We're going to be right back.